I'm Michelle Despres, the Ethical Intuitive, and my book is Intuitively You, Evolve Your Life and Mend the World. And a quick synopsis of that book is really the education we never got in school that allows us to find that balance of self that then allows us to bring that balance out into the world. And so when I say it's evolve your life and mend the world, it's the foundations by which we heal ourselves that naturally then allow us to heal the world.
Book lovers unite! I'm Demethius Jackson, and you're listening to the Chapter 1 podcast. The greatest stories ever written all begin with Chapter 1. In each episode, our guest authors will share their first chapters with you. Hey, everybody. On today's episode, I'm going to be speaking with Michelle Despres. Not only is she a fantastic author and a very high-minded individual, she's also the very first clairvoyant I've ever had on the show. She's written a book called Intuitively You, where she actually shares with you techniques to become more aware of your own intuition. So this episode is for anyone who has maybe felt like they've had a little extra sensory perception going on and didn't quite know how to tap into it. In this book, she explains the differences between extrasensory abilities and also provides techniques to help you become more aware of your own intuition. But the book isn't just about trying to become psychic or anything like that. She also talks about the ethics of having such abilities and how we can use them to make the world a better place. Intuitively You by Michelle Despres starts right now.
So I'm going to read from part 2, Intuitively Aware, just the introduction to this whole section. Use higher perspective to discover personal and global peace. And the quote that I have in there is, as my awareness increases, my control over my own being increases. And that's William Schutz, American psychologist. Iris needed a fresh start and wanted to move out of state. While Iris was positive that moving was her next adventure, she was indecisive about where to go. She had been contemplating 2 locations, but was unsure which best supported her aspirations and sought my insight for clarity. My session with Iris was extensive. I helped her understand what the essence of each place would create as experience for her and how each would assist in her growth. When we finished, Iris said she felt calmer, and more importantly, she felt certain which of the 2 states was best for her. She was ready to move the minute she left my office. However, as part of the ethics of being intuitive, I suggested that Iris not take my word for it or make sudden decisions based on what I interpreted. Rather, she should allow her intuition to validate whether or not her choice was sound. I instructed Iris to take the next week to pay attention to her inner senses to see what they might reveal about relocating. Over the week, Iris was to notice what inner impressions, pictures, thoughts, and feelings she was having, as well as paying attention to the conversations and synchronicities happening around her. By being intuitively aware, she could receive the messages that would serve to confirm or contradict her choice. Iris followed my advice. During her week of heightened intuitive awareness, she overheard a couple talking about their fabulous vacation to the state she was considering. Iris also talked about hearing a song repeating in her head that she vaguely remembered but didn't know. When she looked up the lyrics, she found the name of the state buried in a verse. However, Iris said she was sure she was on her proper path when suddenly she had a vision of herself driving a different direction to work. She turned quickly to accommodate her inner prompting and found herself behind a car with a license plate from the state in which she now resides. You are and always have been receiving intuitive information, guiding you toward the answers of your questions. When you don't know how to attune to those messages, it is easy to get off track and become lost in your life. If you are uncertain about your job, a love interest, or even your health, using intuitive awareness will lead you to your answers. Interestingly, in the 1970s and 80s, the CIA, in conjunction with the Stanford Research Institute, began conducting experiments meant to prove or disprove psychic abilities. Much to their surprise, the researchers not only confirmed that extrasensory faculties exist, they also mastered those skills and built systems around them, such as remote viewing, to provide protocols for increasing their otherworldly accuracy. One of the original researchers, Dr. Russell Targ, wrote in an article in 2015 entitled, "The Reality of ESP, a Physicist's Proof of Psychic Abilities." Referring to his 40 years of psychic research, he stated, "Based on all these decades of data, I believe it would be logically unreasonable to deny the reality of some kind of human ability for direct awareness or experience of distance events that are blocked from ordinary perception." Targ goes on to say, "In my experience, and according to most other researchers, it appears that an experienced psychic can answer any question that has an answer. I cannot wait to see what the future holds when we fully open the doors to our perception. It is the time to accept the gift of psychic abilities. The hardware is fine, it's the software that must be upgraded, and quickly. Your intuitive knowledge is needed more than ever. If we are going to think our way out of the world's problems, upgrading our software by accessing higher perception is where to find the answers." Here is a description of your 4 cornerstone instincts. These core senses will aid you in shifting perspectives so that you can find your higher solution to evolving your personal circumstances, as well as transitioning our cultural beliefs away from indifference and separation toward understanding and acceptance. Number 1, clairvoyance, clear seeing. Clairvoyance allows you to see and project symbolic images and stories in your mind's eye, giving you information about your health, wealth, and well-being. Your higher sight also allows you to see another person's perspective in ways that promote harmony within all your relationships, enlightening the world around you. Number 2, clairaudience, clear hearing. Clairaudience allows you to hear words and detect frequency vibrations that tell you the nature of your circumstances and how best to stay on your personal path. Your higher attunement also aids you in becoming a better listener so that you can engage in your relationships, creating common ground and diplomacy with all people. Number 3, clairsentience, clear sensing. Clairsentience allows you to feel emotions, taste auras, and even sense the pain of others so that you can become aware of the factors influencing your life and can change them at will. Your heightened feelings also provide you with the ability to connect deeply to other people, initiating empathy that promotes balanced partnerships and caring communities. And number 4, claircognizance, clear knowing. Claircognizance relates directly to your ability to know something with absolute truth and provide you with the power to live your most authentic life. Your knowingness is also instrumental in accessing innovative global ideas with the potential to reinvent our harried daily routines, stabilize Earth's climate, and even create world peace. While your core instincts have always been working, you may not be aware of them or taken them seriously as a guiding system or means of finding the meaning in your circumstances so you can transform your life. In this section, you will learn to use your fundamental intuitive senses to discover new ways of relating to yourself and others.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You have a very interesting background. Can you share a little bit for us?
I grew up I'm just an everyday person. I grew up like everybody else in a lot of ways. I, as a kid, had a lot of psychic moments that I didn't realize were, just that energetic world reaching out. And so I had a relationship to an unseen world that other people didn't seem to connect with. And it made things sort of difficult for me.
Hmm.
I didn't have necessarily good parental structures in my life. And those guiding forces were there with me during times when I really needed, looking after. But as happens with anybody that's, just naturally psychic, because I'm a believer that we're all psychic, where everybody's intuitive. But when I started to share my otherworldly experiences, particularly with my peers, I was made fun of. And so I shut it down and I turned that skill off. I stopped speaking to the energetic world. And it led me in kind of down a path that just wasn't me.
So it sounds like you were actually trying to force yourself to go in a different direction than life was telling you to go in.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It was because I was not following my own inner instincts and doing what I was really right for me and doing what was I thought what was it was expected of me, caused me depression, ill health, anxiety. It ruined my marriage. And so it wasn't until spirit stepped back in again and I heard a voice say to me, "Fret not, everything will be fine." That's when I decided I need to explore whatever this energetic thing is that goes on that people make fun of in our culture. I need to figure out what that is because I think it's the only thing that's going to make a difference for me.
So
And it did.
it sounds like clairvoyance was something that you were born with, and perhaps all of us have some sense of it as well. But
Yes.
when you finally accepted it, was it something that you had to develop over time, or once you accepted it, it just unleashed?
No, it's been a development for sure. So, as a girl, I used to say my mother and my sister were psychic and I wasn't because they used to get all kinds of, things like that. And I didn't really equate what was happening to me as psychic because my
Mhm.
sister would get crossed over people and things like that with her. And I used to think I really wasn't that. So when I came back into it, it was more a clairaudient experience. I heard a voice, I didn't see anything. But then I was led to a school in Denver that taught the Berkeley Psychic Program, which is a 40-year-old program that nobody ever hears about. But they taught a clairvoyant program,
Hmm.
which was teaching us how to see energy, not hear it or feel it or know it, just see it. And that's where I started to develop my clairvoyance. And that brought me into my career. And I started my career then. And it's been 15 years of really developing those skills. And now I'm just as clairvoyant as I am clairaudient, clairsentient, and claircognizant. I've taken the time to really develop all of those to pretty fine degrees.
And that's absolutely amazing. And I think you're the first clairvoyant I've actually spoken to. You're definitely the first one I've had on the show. I will say that.
Great.
But this is a subject that I am tremendously interested in because, as you mentioned, I've always felt like we have these abilities within ourselves. We just don't necessarily know how to tap into them. And then after my mother passed away, there were a lot of things that I experienced that I couldn't really explain. They range from like having these really in-depth and detailed dreams where we're speaking to each other after her passing, where I can remember every detail to this day. And then also like weird things would happen around the house. Like I'm kind of a techie gadget dude and, my TV would cut on by itself or the lights would just be on and I know I left them off. And the point that I was trying to make is that a lot of people, when they experience things like that, something that's perceivably supernatural or whatever, they kind of shy away from it. It scares them. It freaks them out. Whereas with me, I kind of accepted it because I told myself, well, it's still my mother. It's the energy that was my mother. She's still here. And if she's trying to communicate with me, then I need to allow myself to be open to receive whatever she's trying to tell me. And at that point, the experiences began happening a little bit more. And then over time, they just kind of faded away. But for the time I had them, they were incredible.
Right, right. And she's still there. It's just maybe you don't need her proving it to you quite as much. And you can just know she's there and know that she works on your behalf. One of the things I've seen with spirit on the other side is they are learning just as much as when they were here in their bodies
Yeah.
by watching and assisting us in our paths and our plans. And so I'm sure she wants to still help.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I've always thought about as well, that the learning process just doesn't end once this physical life is over. That
Right.
soul, that entity, whatever it is that's still you, it's still learning, it's still evolving. Evolving into what? I have no clue, but
Right.
evolving nonetheless.
Exactly.
So, okay, we kind of jumped into a lot of terms and getting into your book, Strengthening Your Own Intuition. For the uninitiated, can you explain what intuition is or what you mean by intuition? Now, are you referring to a gut feeling or is it something else?
Yeah, gut feeling is one of the ways you feel it. Intuition comprises a series of faculties. It equates to your same five senses, only they're not physical senses in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, intuition is that ability to hear, see, feel, and know energy. And
Mm-hmm.
everything is energy. We know that today, right? Science has helped us understand that it's all just energy. And prior to something becoming a physical form, like, prior to my book becoming physically formed, it was an idea. It was in my head first. And in that sense, it's just energy, it's a thought. And then I start to build density around it and create it into form. But it's my intuition that can tell me what is happening in that energetic realm.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm good at, being able to attune to the energy around me, it's going to form into a symbol. The language of the universe is symbolism. And then your intuition will pick up that symbol and it'll show you or help you feel something, or it will, give a vibration or something like that. Your intuition is going to clue you into the energies, and then you will interpret the symbolism of that.
And that actually makes a lot of sense. I've never heard that before, that you said the language of the universe is symbolism?
Yeah, and no two people's and symbolism gets to be unique for every person. Like if I see the color blue and it makes me feel happy, but you see the color blue and it makes you sad, both are correct. It's all in how it's going to show up for us so we know what to interpret it as. It comes from our frame of reference.
How can a person become more aware of their true intuition as opposed to just the random thoughts and emotions that they're having throughout the day?
Right? Well, it is a fine line. And it takes a certain amount of development and attention to that skill. So, if you want to be increasing your clairvoyance, then you're going to be paying attention to every little, image that runs through your mind. And as you're doing that, you're allowing yourself to get good at recalling that crispness of an image, because that's what clairvoyance is the clear seeing skill.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite ways to develop it is I go back into my dreams and I'll recall a dream. And like you were saying, you had that event with your mother and you can see it as if it was yesterday.
Yeah.
That's your intuitive faculty working right there, bringing you that up so that you can readdress it or, continue to process it or figure out what it was saying to you, whatever it might be. But you can focus in on an image and you can start to increase that faculty.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's how I know it was real because I
Right.
can remember it with such detail.
Right. And that is the whole point, is the more that you get good at going, oh, okay, there's an image that just came in that I wasn't expecting. So that's really my intuition. And versus the, oh, you know what, I'm hoping I see this. And that's what you see. And this is what I always say. This is how I let my intuition validate itself to me. Like I'm the original skeptic. I mean, I come from a military family, a Republican family. So my liberal ways are definitely my own. But how you get used to recognizing, is this my mind versus is this my intuition? I like to let the universe validate it. So if I get an intuitive impression, like I use this example in my book. I once needed to move offices. Our office was changing up and I didn't want to move. I was really resistant to moving.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, everywhere I was going, I would see a fox. I mean, just crazy. Everywhere I was, there was a fox, whether it was on a cereal box or whether it was literally running down the street. Everywhere this fox was coming up. So I get home, right? And I had been saying to the universe, I think I'm supposed to move. I think I'm supposed to go. I don't want to. Is there, but confirm it for me, because I'd really rather just stay So all of a sudden I'm seeing this fox, and I get home and I Google, symbolism of the fox. And there's lots of different sort of natures of the fox, camouflage and whatever it else might be. But adaptability was one of the natures of the fox.
Hmm.
And when I saw adaptability, it pinged inside me. I could feel it. And I knew instantly that it was saying to me, you need to be adaptable. This is a message confirming be adaptable. And
You,
so I did it. I adapted and I went with the flow. The perfect office situation came up for me, like better than I could have even expected.
yeah, you got the answer you were looking for.
Right. And now that over the years, working with intuition and learning how it really shows up for me, I don't necessarily have to make it prove it to me anymore. I know when I'm feeling what is correct versus what is in my mind.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
Your previous book was called The Clairvoyant Path. So is Intuitively You a continuation of that book, or is this something completely different?
Right. Such a good question, because that first book, they're sort of similar, but then there's some very huge differences at the same time. That first book was what I was taught. It's sort of a reiteration of everything I was taught. But my new book is 15 years of what I teach and how I have learned to work with everyday people to get this information to them. So Clairvoyant Path, it's a little bit rigid, I have to say. And it's a little narrowed, and it's missing some things that I think everyday people need to be able to get into their intuition. And it's why I decided to reconceptualize what initially really would be my first book and the basics and the core element of it. And as I was, really thinking about how do I, change this information and bring in the stuff that's really pertinent today, like the ethics. I wrote the ethical intuitive standards because we don't have those in our industry. But also not a lot of people talk about ethics
Nowadays.
Right?
Yeah.
But there has to be something like that. And so we need to cover those things, but also guidelines for feeling really comfortable and safe getting into that space. And I have, the first chapter of my new book of Intuitively You is 7 guidelines for instantly using your intuition, like in all aspects of your life immediately. So that wasn't in the first one. And it's been over the years of working with my students and clients and realizing here's how they need this information to be able to step into it immediately. That's what's in this new book.
So I'm glad that you started diving a little bit more into the book, because it's actually broken into 6 sections. And I was hoping you can briefly summarize them, of course, without giving too much away, but, just kind of touching on the main subject or topic of each section.
Yeah, you bet. So chapter 1, which is intuitive understandings, that's a series of guidelines to help feel safe and comfortable, like I was saying, getting into the tools. So, it goes through a pretty extensive understanding of energy and the science behind intuition, how faculties such as imagination play into the equation, and how to work with those things. So it's pretty extensive there. In part 2, Intuitively Aware, that's where we get into the 4 cornerstone instincts, which is that clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance. And those are your foundations that will provide you with the ability to sense energy and get your information. And I go through how to develop those senses. That part 2 is getting to be getting familiar with that sense, practicing it, because there's a ton of tools and exercises throughout this book, stories, tools, exercises. But you'll get used to what, it feels like to be clairvoyant, to be clairaudient, but then you'll also get ways of developing those. But then it starts to build. So when you get to part 3, intuitively responsible, you start taking those skills that you learned, your foundations, those 4 cornerstone instincts, and you start using them to manage your own energetic space. You put boundaries around yourself. You get into your own wisdom and knowledge. You claim your command central. Everybody has access to universal wisdom. You don't need to go through any other source. You can get it for yourself. So in that part 3, it's about how to really manage your energy and stay on top of your own dynamics so that you can start to be effective with yourself, which is what goes into part 4, intuitively you. And in that segment, this is where we start using, again, we take that concept of I have my 4 cornerstone instincts, and I now know how to hold my own space energetically so that I'm in control of it and being responsible for it. And now I can start looking at my bigger dynamics. So we're multidimensional, very multidimensional. And then if you find, based on what you find there, you can start making adjustments to bring a better balance to yourself and balance to all 4 of those foundational elements of you, because those are the things that if you're depressed, then one of those 4 foundational bodies, your mind, body, spirit, emotions, something's off in there. And knowing how to go in and look at it is how you can right those issues. And then in part 5, it's taking these skills and bringing them outside of yourself. So it's one thing to be intuitive and look at yourself and do your own internal work, which is always the first thing that intuition is about. It's not about foretelling the future for other people or even for yourself. It's about understanding why you're experiencing what you're experiencing and how to alter it if you don't like what the circumstances are. But there is the component then that intuition now allows you to pull that out into the world as well and balance outwardly. So in part 5, with you intuitively united, we start to look at, first of all, your bigger picture. Who are you really as a soul? Not just your spirit, but now your soul. And your soul has inhabited many bodies. It's incarnated itself into many bodies. And being able to take a look at your past lives to be able to see how that energy has come forward with you today and might be influencing you even still in this lifetime, good, bad, or indifferent.
Can I pause you for one sec?
Sure.
So I'm sure the folks that are listening to this podcast are going to say, wait, I thought spirit and soul were the same thing. They're different?
They are different. There's, I tend to think of the soul is all encompassing. And your spirit is really what you're bringing into this lifetime. But your soul houses everything you've had in every lifetime.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah. So then once you take a look at that soul's history, you go in and then you can really have a deeper understanding of yourself. And it lets you come to deeper understandings with family dynamics and also with gender equality. There's a section in here all on how to balance the masculine and feminine, how to balance that within ourselves, but then also how to bring that into our relationships so we can all really start appreciating one another for our uniqueness and who we really are. And then once we get done with all of that, we get into part 6. And that's sort of the wrap up where we have the intuitively ethical section. And this is a series of ethics that now that you've got, your working order of intuition and you want to get out there and play with it in the world, there are ethics that go along with that. For instance, I always use the Teresa Caputo reference. She's the Long Island medium, if you've ever seen that show. And, and I'm glad that information is out there because it's bringing more light to this subject. However, she will go up to just random people anywhere and just say, oh my gosh, I see this going on for you. And it's kind of alarming. So, but there's an ethic. You don't just do that. Mm-hmm. Just because you can see energy and you might be able to interpret what is going on for somebody else doesn't mean you should. And it doesn't mean you're always right. And, if somebody's asking you to look at something, then you do. But if they're not, then you don't. And so there's a series of, I can't remember how many. There's quite a few different ethics in here, how to apply this information so that it's, still working for you, but you're not lording it over others or, using it inappropriately. Because I always say higher-minded people can still be narrow in their perspectives. Yeah. So, we need to just respect that everybody has a right to be whoever they are, and we don't need to be reading their energy and telling them what we think they should be, unless they're asking us to do that. And then we can certainly offer our insights.
Exactly.
And then, of course, in concluding, the chapter that concludes is entitled Transforming the American Dream. And it talks about how this is the education. Einstein said, we can't solve the problem with the same thinking that created it. And he was known for using intuition. Him and Tesla particularly were very intuitive individuals. And that's what Einstein's talking about. Until we start using our intuitive faculty, which, by the way, Forbes magazine wrote an article calling intuition the highest form of intelligence. So if we don't start learning how to use this in our everyday lives, we're not going to fix our problems, because this is the balancing force, is intuition and insight and understanding.
Absolutely. And I mean, at least to me, it's obvious the benefit of enhancing your intuition. But what do you say to the people who may not believe in intuition or any other types of extrasensory abilities?
Well, you know what? I'm such a believer that to each his own. Not everybody has to believe that. You know, it doesn't take the whole of the population to really shift a mindset.
Yeah, you're not trying to force your opinion or your views or your beliefs on anyone.
No, I'm really not. And even though, you know, I'm really pretty darn adamant about the fact that this is what fixes things. So, you know, I'm always going to be on that soapbox. But at the same time, if somebody doesn't want to hear it, I can shut up. I can be quiet.
So do you offer any other type of resources for people who read your book and want to learn even more about clairvoyance or intuition?
Oh, sure. There's so many great authors out there and so much great material. And so I say, check it all out. A lot of our great teachers like Deepak Chopra, Doreen Virtue, and Sonia Choquette. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful resources out there. Brene Brown. But here's what I also say. If somebody's information doesn't resonate with you, then it's just not for you. I think that there's not one piece of information that's 100% correct. It's for the people who need it. And so I say, you know, play with it and find the teachers that really resonate with you. Absorb yourself in it, but always, always remember you're the only authority. The great thing about intuition is that it clues us into the fact that we are just energy. And when we understand we're energy, we are now all of a sudden creators, because all of a sudden we're not just subject to a chemical reaction, which is what science used to think we were. We were birthed out of a chemical reaction, which means we're victims to what's happening to us. But as an energetic charge, we're the creators of that charge.
Absolutely. But do you specifically, do you have any resources or do you teach any courses for people who want to learn more about this from you?
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'm teaching all the time. I have several different programs that I teach. As a matter of fact, I am just now video recording the Intuitively You book study course. And it will be all the tools. It's going to be like 50 videos because there's a bunch of tools in here. But I will personally run everybody through all of these tools so that it's ingrained and they really understand it. And I'm really excited about that. I'm in the middle of getting that project done. But I also teach classes here in Denver and in Fort Collins. I do a lot of speaking engagements. And I have my intuitive practitioner program. And the intuitive practitioner program is the business of being intuitive. It's a 3-year mastery program in total. And it's a certified program on, the dynamics of people, of self, but also how we come about building our businesses as intuitives, offering therapeutic insight. Because I really believe that this is the future of talk therapy, going to see your intuitive therapist and getting insight into something you can't quite get for yourself.
So if folks wanted to contact you in regards to these programs, how do they get in touch with you?
Great. Yes. You can find my website. You can get to it through theethicalintuitive.com or my name, which is michelledepre.com, but that's always a little harder. And you'll see everything I do out there. My website's, pretty well laid out. I host individual sessions too. I work with my own clients. So if anybody wants to book with me, you can book online with me, and I do phone sessions as well as in-person sessions. So anything like that, but you can get involved in all my work through my website. You'll see my podcast and my classes, my blog. I'm getting ready to do a live Facebook feed once a month as well.
Yeah. And let me commend you on that right now, like actually teaching people the business side of this as well.
Oh,
Because being an author, you understand how difficult it is. Well, once you write a book, what do you do with the book? And again, when
right.
people learn these skills, what do you do with them? How do you share them?
Exactly. And
How do
I've
you
seen
support
so
yourself
many
off of them?
people.
Because that's important too.
It's really important. And most of those, most of my alternative people like that flounder out there because they're not very business minded.
Well, I think that's incredible, and I think that you are really bringing the entire package, and even just allowing people to become a little bit more aware of their instincts during the course of the day. Every little bit helps.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you again for joining me today. And one more time, what was that website address?
Theethicalintuitive.com.
And with that, we're going to wrap up another episode. Thanks again to Michelle Despres. That was super informative, and I hope you all got a lot out of it. And we'll go through the day being a little bit more aware of your own intuition. If you have any questions or comments for her, or for me, or you know an author who you think would be a good fit for the show, let me know. Connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or send an email to info@ch1podcast.com. Check out the website at ch1podcast.com, where there you can listen to previous episodes and hopefully find your next favorite author. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Overcast, wherever podcasts can be downloaded. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review, but most importantly, tell everyone you know about the show, because that is how we grow. Okay, that is it for me. You all stay awesome. Till next time.